Hello, I'm Jackie Denise, and I'm delighted to be a part of the Law of Attraction Radio Network. In each episode, you will be presented inspiring stories and practical insights as a means of helping you create a life that is filled with some measure of fulfillment. Let's embark on this journey together to discuss and explore different facets of happiness. My hope is to have you enjoy and look forward to each and every show. Fabio Zeppilli, co-founder and vice president of Bad Monkey Popcorn. Welcome to our show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Your company, owned by yourself and your three brothers, Matteo, Luciano, Joey, is one of the largest manufacturers and distributors of popcorn in North America. Renowned for innovation, Bad Monkey Popcorn has also introduced the groundbreaking Heat and Bag, which is the world's first heatable bag of popcorn. Your popcorn, which comes in many flavors, to name a few, double butter, caramel, sweet and salty, and right now, I'm eating dill pickle.
Oh, yeah, the dill pickle. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, which is great. So,
Classic.
yes, so tell us about your story. You started as a lawyer. How did you find your purpose?
Yeah, to be honest with you, so when I was growing up, I came from a very, I guess, an economically unfavorable situation, and so I didn't have many role models to look at to be like, hey, you know what? Like, my dad's a doctor and I could do that, or my mom's a fill in the blank or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for me, I was kind of like, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I know that I wanted to be someone successful. I didn't know what that meant. Like for me, the idea of happiness wasn't even really there. It's just like, I need to do a job that makes money. So in my head, I'm like, oh, I think I saw a TV show once when I was a kid. I was like, where there's like a lawyer there and he looked like he's wearing a nice suit. And for me, I was like, okay, let's do that. So I was almost like I would say autopilot for the early part of my scholastic, adventure, if you will.
Yeah.
And what happened was I ended up achieving what I had set myself out to do, right? I was really good in school and I worked really hard, of course. And so I found myself as a lawyer, in-house lawyer for an aerospace company. And I was like, oh, I thought I would be happy at this point.
Right.
I had like a stable job, good salary, all that stuff. And I wasn't happy. And I realized that it's because I wasn't kind of doing what I think I was meant to do, if that makes any sense, right?
Yes.
I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to do based on, I don't even know what, because it's not like my parents were like, go be a lawyer. Nobody was encouraging me to do anything. It was all coming from myself. And then I said, you know what? Look, I was in my early 30s. I said, look, it's never a good time to be an entrepreneur. Let's be honest. Like whether you're like 20, 30, 60, it doesn't matter your age. It's always hard, right? So I said, you know what? 2 years into my career, I'll give it a shot now. And worst case, if it doesn't work out, maybe I'll go back to practicing law, But so as I said, so literally like it was super quick. Like my brothers and I, we came up with this idea on like a Sunday. And then by like that Wednesday, I'd given my 2-week notice. Like it was super fast.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy because, I think in entrepreneurship schools, they probably teach you like, set up a business plan and like have forecasts. We had nothing. We had like this envisionment of what we wanted to do and let's go do it. And we'll figure out the details as we kind of, go along.
This felt right.
Yeah. And I think like if you go real far back, like, we're talking like, let's say 100 years, 200 years, they weren't doing business plans. That's not how it worked. Nobody set up the Eaton company or let's say the Bay. Right. They're just like, they went out and they hustled and they got it done. And so, yeah, maybe my way was like a throwback to an old way to do things. I'm not saying it's the best way, of course, but it's just the way we did it. And so, yeah, that's kind of a bit how some people are like, oh, why did you go into law? And I wish I had a good answer. But like I said to you before, it was just kind of like, it seemed like the right thing to do.
Right. And from that point, of course, you transformed or you created Bad Monkey Popcorn, which is a huge success. In addition to Bad Monkey Popcorn, you also, of course, invest in the community. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So, there's different ways to invest in the community, right? So like you can do it with financial ways, you can do it with your time, you can do it. There's all kinds of things to do. And I realize that sometimes like giving money to certain projects I like to be hands-on. I like to see what's happening. I like to be involved. And what I realized when I was growing up was that, like I said, I didn't have any mentors and I didn't have any sort of people to help guide me. So for me, like if I can give back with my time and I can give back with my knowledge and I can help younger entrepreneurs or even other aged entrepreneurs kind of avoid many of the pitfalls I did, for me, that's definitely a way to give back because I'm allowing them to kind of achieve their dreams, or not allowing them, but like helping them along their way. and of helping them avoid things that cost me tons of money, tons of time and stress and things like that. So I don't charge folks. I do a lot of like mentorship and a lot of speeches and a lot of things like that. And so, yeah, I guess it's just for me, it feels good to do that because it's like, I've been blessed with a particular set of circumstances right now. And so it's like, if I can help pass forward that blessing, then to me, it's a good thing.
Definitely have been blessed. How do you transform your inner critic to your inner coach?
Yeah, it's a good question. And again, I wish I had an answer. I think it's a continuous battle, you know? So for me, for example, I'm big on running. I'll give you an example quick. About 3 years ago, I was very overweight and I was having like trouble even breathing sometimes. I think I was so focused on the business that
Yes.
I wasn't eating well. And I'm not saying that you need to be on these crazy diets, but I just was like on a horrendous diet every day. And I was justifying it by the fact that I was working hard. But then I realized that, these are two separate things, right? And so for me, it was like a slow process to get in. I walked one block, then two, and then three, and then I started doing like marathons eventually. And then so now I run like every single day. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because it's an everyday process. And so for me, like converting that inner critic into somebody who's cheering for you, for me is an everyday process.
Yeah.
Because there's days that are like crappy, there's days that are great. And the ability to turn a crappy day into a great day most often lies with you.
Absolutely.
Because you can only control the controllables and everything else is up to you. So psychologically, that is. And so for me, like that psychological part has been super important for myself, at least over, I would say, the past few years. It's like funny because like the company had a big success, but
Yeah.
like on a personal side, and I was taking the brunt of all the bad stuff. If that makes any sense.
Oh, it does. It does. And I was going to ask, how do you not get in your own way? It's difficult sometimes because sometimes you're so in your head.
Yeah, I think it's funny. It's like, so like Abraham Lincoln, I don't know if this is true or not, right? But he filled his cabinet up with people who agree with him and people who don't, right? So it's like, for us, like here, we have a lot of folks working here, and like there's some people who their vision is completely different than mine, but I like it because for me, it helps me get outside of my head in a way and see things that I wouldn't normally see. It's like you have this like bubble effect where you're like always thinking, oh, I know exactly what to do. But then like some other guys like, actually, you know what? That idea is wrong for X and X reason. I'm like, you're right.
Well,
It's a good thing I had a sounding board that was not myself.
yes, and it's good to have diverse opinions,
That's
right?
correct.
It
Oh my
makes a
gosh.
difference. Absolutely. And there's something that you just said too that triggered another question for me. What are the top 5 things you cherish in life?
It's funny. Like, I think 4 of the 5 are like my close relatives. But to be honest with you, it's like, it's a good thing. Like, I think it's a good question. Sorry. Yeah, it's tough. Wow, 5, eh? It's off the top of my head like that. For me, my mental health is extremely important. And it's something that over the years I've worked to kind of like to take care of. It's, when someone's overweight, you can go, oh, I'm X pounds overweight. Let me address those pounds. But then what happens when you're like, you have anxiety? How do you quantify that? How do you deal with that? So for me, focusing on my mental health is extremely important, making sure that my family life is strong as well. I mean, some people just say that, but I truly mean that. I think that like when I'm with my family, I'm hyper focused on that. I'm not working. I'm in the moment with that. And
You're
that's,
spending the time with your family. You're in there. You're in the zone. Yeah, absolutely.
it's so easy to be like at the park or something with like your significant other, and then you get a text and you're like, oh, hold on a second, I'm just going to respond to this. But then it's like you're not in that moment anymore. Does that make sense? And so it's like, yeah, so that I've worked really hard to stop that. And the other things I cherish, I mean, I don't know, like the company, the financial stuff, it's weird, man. It's because like as you get more success, it's like I realize that it's not as important. I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't know why that's
It
true.
does. It does. Yeah.
I don't come from a lot, so for me to, if I had like if I was bankrupt tomorrow, I'd be like, oh, it sucks, but I've been here before. I'll just go back. Like I don't put value in those things. There's not a tangible thing I care about.
Yeah. You'd find a way to move on and overcome it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'll give you an example. So we sold, I think it was about 75% of our business to a private equity firm like 2.5 years ago for like a large like a large amount of money.
Yeah.
And the reason we did that was because the private equity firm was going to help us really go to the next level. Because every entrepreneur, like there's a ton of things we don't know. And for me to scale a company from like 10 million to like 100 million, that's not in my repertoire. And like literally like the day after the sale went through, my brothers and I were at like Tim Hortons, just like literally, I'm not joking. I was complaining to the guy because they'd burnt my bagel. Like there was no champagne. There's no like, we literally like it was as if nothing happened, like literally. And
Really?
yeah. like I've changed nothing in my life since then.
Yeah. And again, it all centers too. I know you talked about Tim Hortons and just
Yeah.
being, but more importantly, what's really, really of value is that you were there with your family. And
Yep.
that's what's truly, truly important. It comes back to,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So Fabio Zeppilli, again, co-founder and vice president of Bad Monkey Popcorn. Thank you very much for your time today.
No
And we
problem.
really appreciate your coming out. And now for yet another facet of happiness, I introduce my second guest, Julian Ho. Julian Ho, welcome to our show. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for having me.
Well, Julian, you have many accomplishments. Besides being a holistic health coach, you're a certified trainer, a group fitness coach, an accomplished endurance athlete, an ultra marathoner. You just recently completed over 100 kilometers at the 2024 UTMB major in Auburn, California. You have been teaching fitness for just over 15 years, and you specialize in kinesiology and athletic training. I'm looking at you and I see a person who instills confidence, calmness, and discipline. Yet you have a very competitive and intense side to you. And you describe yourself as a go-getter, an A-type manifesting generator. You have inspired so many people to just start and move and get up. I have many questions that I'd like to ask, but first, the first question is, what is holistic health? And is there a difference between health and holistic health? And what are the benefits?
Health most often is perceived on the physiological level. And when you put something, a word in front of it, like mental health, then you speak to the psychology and the temperament and emotional well-being of someone. Holistic is a broad spanning word that describes the whole of the human. So seeing the human, the person from many different perspectives. Typically we have maybe 6 to 8 dimensions of holistic well-being. We have our mental, physical, emotional. Then we have our social, spiritual, occupational, and you can add to that environmental. So when you see someone through all of those dimensions, then you can start to either assess, prescribe, diagnose, coach, and guide from that lens. And when you see the whole human, then you can take into consideration many things that other healthcare and coaching practitioners might not see. Because to us as holistic health practitioners, everything counts. Everything, whether it's, a death in the family, a birth in the family, a relationship gone wrong, or a job that's gone successfully well, or just a pebble in your shoe for the day, or a lack of hydration, or a poor sleep. Like everything really, really counts when it comes to understanding the health of that person presented that day and that time.
I understand that. And you mentioned two things that I just want to touch upon. You talked about physical and mental. And because there are a lot of people listening right now that are tremendously overweight, that have mobility problems, and they want to start, but they struggle. How do you suggest that they begin?
I'm very much the mindset person, and it really depends on where they are at their stage of life, their chapter, what experiences they've gone through, how much of an issue it is, how pressing it is. So what I usually do is a motivational interviewing process where I understand the person's motives, the motivations to get started. If there is enough of a climactic moment where enough is enough situation and I need to get started on this, or else I'm going to face these consequences, then there's enough power, enough energy built to then make real change. And so assessing someone and sharing with them what their North Star is. Why are you doing this? Why do you need to change? Why do you want to improve your mobility? And what's drawing you there? Maybe perhaps you went to the doctors recently and your doctor said to you, well, the way that your musculoskeletal system is looking, you're going to experience osteoarthritis in 2 years. Maybe the overweightness and the diabetes, you're going to have to get on this medication in 1 year. The only way to offset that is to make a big life change. So some people learn by consequence and they learn through these reality checks. Some people naturally just want to shift. They're going through maybe the phases, the motions of life, and they realize culturally outside, they're seeing a lot of their friends and social groups are really jumping on the bandwagon of movement, mobility, stretching, and really taking care of themselves. So then they start to feel left behind. So there's another shift there, the social power. And then internally, they could take stock of their job and their family and their current way of life. And they just think, maybe I could improve the quality of my life by just adding.
So, are there specific daily habits or routines that you believe contribute to your productivity and well-being?
Absolutely. For myself, I have seasonal changes with my habits. So, depending on what my North Star is, what is my goal? What is my aim? What are my priorities? Once I have those understood and taking time to really sit with myself to understand those and then map it out, then those habits and behaviors on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly really start to align. And then you can get started with full confidence and competence. You start to really get engaged with what you do. So, it could start with how you feed yourself, how you fuel yourself, how you hydrate, having a certain standard or a certain level of what these habits can produce, something to benchmark against is really critical. Not just doing it aimlessly, having a certain number of hours of sleep. It's all the basics. How you formulate the fine tuning of it really comes down to, again, specificity of your priorities. Also your North Star. Why are you doing it? Always checking in with that. And because I change from one season to the next, each season's going to have, it's mountains to climb. It's easy low points. So it really depends, again, very holistically on other factors that can really help you fine tune. But I would say one of the best tips I can provide you, which comes from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, is you have to make these habits and behaviors very, very easy.
Mhm.
You have to make them attractive. You have to make them convenient. And you have to see the value in what they are.
What about having a personal vision?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the whole priority, having a self identity that aligns with your beliefs and who you want to become or who you are at the moment and how you can honor where you are at this phase of your life. Meeting yourself where you are is where these behaviors really resonate, and they can set the tone to not just a quick fix, a seasonal or annual change. They can be long life.
Can you walk us through your specific routine that you do on a daily basis?
Okay. Well, so my lifestyles and work is very different from, let's say, the typical 9 to 5 professional. I work in sort of clumps of shifts. So in the morning, I'll wake around like 7 o'clock. And so 7 to 8, I really dive into morning hygiene right away, taking care of my skin, taking care of just hygiene. And then I'll have some light movements and stretches that I do while I brush my teeth and as I move through my space. Then I'll get into coffee and emails. So some computer work. And then from 8 to 11, I'll go into clients. I'll start making myself a really nice big brunch. People always ask what I eat since I'm super fit. So I always have to have fermented foods. So kimchi, sauerkraut are key for gut health. I also have sourdough bread, which is also incredible. And then I get a good amount of fiber.
As well, in addition, you take supplements as well?
Sometimes, again, in seasons, I will. So right now I'm taking in collagen and vitamin C in the mornings. And then I have omega-3s in the afternoon. And then I take magnesium in the evenings. I make sure that I have with my food a lot of fiber. So kale is one of my favorites. And then I take in avocado, so for some healthy fats.
I feel like I need to do a cooking show with you.
Yeah. I would say it's simple because I do it quite often, but these are just ingredients that I've learned along the way that help me. So I don't necessarily go into full culinary mode. I more so arrange ingredients in a thoughtful way. And that's to me a very functional way of eating because it honors the ingredients. It doesn't complicate things. but it's done in an expedited way. It's efficient. It gets the job done, and I enjoy. So yeah, so protein and then some eggs. In the afternoon, I work from 11 to 3 with clients' classes, and I do computer work. And to help keep me focused in the lulls of the afternoon, I sometimes take in like green tea, which is an antioxidant as well, and also gives me a different kind of caffeine buzz. But I don't always do that. And I also work out in the afternoons. So it's at the point where my cortisol is my highest. So in the midday, your energy is the highest. So I like to capitalize on that. I know not everyone can do that, but a lot of people who work from home, I would recommend doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. That's great. Tell us about the wildest goal that you've achieved, and what were you going through then, and how did you make it happen?
Yeah, wildest goal. So I would say in most recent would be the goal of living abroad in adult life. I decided to take a sabbatical pre/during COVID, and I spent 2 years moving to Costa Rica. I just needed a break from the city life to grow a version of myself I knew was itching to be more connected with the earth and those that were different from the city mindset of the hustle, that kind of culture. Those that are walking the path that had similar inner conflict of needing to work for livelihood, but seeking spiritual development and holistic prosperity and fulfillment. And I just felt it was the right time to go. And that, took a lot of letting go kind of work. So letting go of the shoulds, the woulds, the coulds, the fears, having to logistically plan, what am I going to do with my home here in Toronto? Really planning, what am I going to do when I'm there, where I'm going to stay? So big part of me is going away and doing these big goals based on education and self-development.
Yeah.
And so I signed myself up for a surf and yoga retreat as a treat for myself. I've always wanted to learn to surf. I also signed up for a 2-week permaculture course, an intensive permaculture course, which is regenerative agriculture and community development in a very sustainable / regenerative way, farming and gardening on a much deeper level. Just learning Spanish, like making sure that I saw a tutor. So those are some life goals and life things that I wanted to accomplish. And that really made the trip and this sort of like wildest goal, it anchored me to that wildest goal and held me accountable.
But it sounds like too that it also helped evolve your identity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. It changed the way I saw myself based on the relationships that I had cultivated. I think that when we evolve our identity, we have to do it extrinsically and intrinsically. When I say extrinsic, it's through other people, through things, experiences, travel. We all know that when we go to a travel trip, not a vacation, different from traveling and adventuring, we are so open and sponge-like to the experiences because we are yearning for something different or experiences that are going to emotionally change us and evolve us and make us really reflect. So connecting with diversity of people is key, not just during my trip, but pretty much every day. I try to connect with a diversity of people. So people older than myself, younger than myself, people who are foreign from here, people who I love dearly, people that rub me the wrong way as well. They all act as mirrors to the self. And that gives what I would call extrinsic leverage to work with. You have this like thing that you can really reflect on and refract from and gain information and data from yourself with someone else. And then internally you evolve by taking stock of the past and setting goals and aspirations for the future. I think those are the ways to evolve the identity.
So after saying all this, what's your key to happiness? Some people think that happiness is hard to get to. Where are we going wrong?
Well, I think it could start with reframing and redefining what happiness is. To me, happiness can also be fulfillment, flourishing, peace of mind, having a high quality of life. These are the things that can get you to a place of, let's say, perceived happiness, or they themselves can be happiness. They are happiness in itself, I think, could be defined as more of a verb as opposed to a noun. It's a process, not a destination point. If you're always hoping to get to this like enlightened place of super high contentment with life, then you start to lose out on the growth potential. In growth mindsetting, Carol Dweck, when we limit and accept that there is a sort of a ceiling to the things that we want to achieve or endeavor for, we really lose out on so much more that's beyond that. So if you see happiness as a destination, then there's a ceiling to it, then you limit yourself. You go into this scarcity mindset. But if you can see happiness as the growth process, as a continual journey, I think that'll help you cultivate things like flourishing, fulfillment, peace of mind, quality of life. Yeah.
I completely agree. If you could sum up your most impactful life lesson in 60 seconds or less, what would?
So I appreciate that there is a little bit of a hint at that kind of question ahead of time. But one thing that really has helped me is the Japanese principle of wabi-sabi. Have you heard of that? Wabi-sabi? Basically, it's like nothing lasts forever. Wabi-sabi is the acceptance of impermanence and transience. It's admiring the imperfect and the incomplete. It's a very deeply Zen philosophical way of living life. Most often we are very definitive and absolute, black and white, with things that we want to accomplish. It's either you're doing it or you're not doing it. And when you've done it, that's it. For me, I like to live in the world of gray area. And I see that there's so much beauty in things that are transient, just like nature. And wabi-sabi is a principle that has come from studying nature. Nothing lasts forever. Things die and things regrow and rebirth. Even seeing beauty in the things that are not perfect, because perfect is a very punctuated exclamation point. But for us, I think, to understand the full principle and really live it and adopt it, you have to understand and also appreciate that nothing is perfect. Yeah. And that things that are imperfect are also beautiful.
I completely agree. Are you pursuing your happiness, or have you already achieved it?
I don't think it's a pursuit. I think I'm experiencing it right now as we speaking to you. I am very happy right now speaking with you, Jackie.
Station.
Yeah.
I really have. You've taught me a few things today. So, and I appreciate what you said too. There's beauty in what people think may not be beautiful. So I really appreciate that.
Well, perspective is a big thing.
Really, really is. I find it's more important now since COVID. And a lot of people, I think, are beginning to feel the same or realize the same as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Their realities were really rocked during that time. And that allowed people to really sit back. As uncomfortable as it was very important, because a lot of people were just going through the motions. And to have such a huge shift and pause, the great pause in everything, allowed people to naturally introspect and reevaluate. And that is what we're kind of going through right now. We're going through the wake of people's introspection and that moment of being more conscious with everything that's around and not taking things for granted. I think it was as much of a tough time. It was a very challenging time. It provided a lot of other sort of like benefits. It forced people to change.
It did.
And that, I think, is always a good thing.
Absolutely. Change, grow, develop. I completely agree. Julian Ho, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me again. This is great.
It was wonderful. Thank you.